All right, so hello and welcome to a free masterclass, Unlock Your Salesforce Career with me. I'm Laurel Mitchell, LM Consulting, and thank you all so much for joining me today. I know especially weekends can be very busy, and it means a lot to me that you would spend this next half hour to an hour with me learning more about just some secrets to unlocking your career, and hopefully you get at least something that you can take home with you and that you've learned today. If you have any questions or anything that's piqued your interest along the way, like I said earlier, I have you muted right now, but I'll unmute you at the end, and you are more than welcome to use the chat throughout the conversation. So please do utilize that. With that, let's get started. So who am I? Laurel Mitchell. I have been working in Salesforce for over a decade and have been working with nonprofits for over 15 years at this point. I have 5 Salesforce certifications, working on my 6th. I'm studying for Service Cloud right now. But yeah, that's where I am right now. And I currently work as a consultant, administrator, and career coach for Salesforce. I started my career ever so long ago as a high school teacher. Actually, I taught physics and math after graduating college, just have my bachelor's degree, nothing advanced. I did enjoy teaching a lot, although if there's any educators on the line, you may be identify with this. It's a lot of responsibility and it's exhausting work. And I didn't see a lot of career growth either. I just saw, you can kind of be a teacher, you can be an administrator or a department head, and a lot of those things would take 10 or 20 years to achieve. And I have different goals than that in my life. So that was something that I cared a lot about, was finding a career that, thanks, Kelvin. It was finding a career that would really match my lifestyle choices and my skill set. So that's when I left teaching. I ended up working at a startup for a couple of years, did a few other various jobs before I became an accidental admin, as they say in the industry, which just means that I basically had never heard of Salesforce until I was asked to join a task force for it at a nonprofit. And that was actually my first experience, was getting to see what it's like on the client side of an implementation. So what is it like to work with a consultant to try to explain yourself to someone without really understanding what the database is like or what's possible? And just that experience really opened my eyes to first of all, what's possible with Salesforce, which is so much. And then also, like, what is it like to be a consultant or work with a consultant, which is now what I'm doing today. And I was definitely inspired a lot by those earlier experiences. So after that, it's not like I did, it's not like I was a client at the nonprofit as a coordinator making 40K a year, and then all of a sudden I'm an admin. No, it took a few different steps along the way. I did a little bit of sales operations, which is very similar to the business analyst role. And then I worked my way up. I worked with a recruiter to get my current position, which is a full-time admin. And I've been doing the consulting and career coaching on the side for a few years now. And I know I have a few of my coachees on the line. So thank you all for joining. Love you all. So that's a lot about me, but I would love to learn about you. If you could type in the chat, if you're comfortable sharing just something that you're passionate about, and what's your experience with Salesforce. You can give me a number 1 through 5 if you're just learning about it, or maybe you've been in the industry for a few years and you're just here to learn more. Open the chat so I can see what you guys are writing. Yes, well-oiled machines, efficiency, yes. A little bit of experience in nonprofit. Transitioning from education, been there, done that. One cert deep, helping the community, hell yeah. That's one thing I really do believe. So many things are coachable and teachable. Caring about things is not. You can't really teach someone to give a shit, So caring about helping the community, caring about helping others is a huge asset that you bring to your work every day. Trying to break in the industry. Oh, don't worry, Debbie, you can get it. I believe in you. I didn't even pass on my first try of the certification, so don't worry about it. It does take some time and some preparation. Nice. Retail, collaboration, Air Force. Whoa. Welcome. Oh my gosh, what a beautiful and vibrant community. Thank you all for sharing about yourselves. It does help a lot to learn about, where you are and what you care about in this world. And like I was saying, you really can't teach people to give a shit. So um, I just love it when people do. And I think that's so huge and something that you really do bring as a strength with you. So let's shift gears and let's talk about Salesforce. Um, so like, what the heck is Salesforce, right? If you're in the Bay Area, you've probably seen that big old tower, heard about Benioff. Maybe you've seen in the news that they acquired Slack, right? Those of you working in the industry probably know a little bit more, but just Salesforce, the company has been around for about 20 years. They currently have, $55 billion in assets and over 50,000 employees across the world. So they're international. They have offices in all kinds of places, and I don't think they're going anywhere anytime soon. That's one thing a lot of folks ask about is like, is Salesforce a good idea as a career? I know I worried about it myself at first. I was like, this is so niche. I'm really going to invest, like, going to put all of my life on the line for this one product. I'm essentially like, committing to being a Microsoft Word expert, right? It kind of feels like the equivalent. And like, is that really sustainable? Is that really going to have a long-term opportunity? And is it going to keep growing? I really do believe it is. And I've said this in the previous master classes, even if Salesforce does go somewhere, which is at this point with customers like Sephora, and it's the vaccine finder, and they're just embedded now in so much of big business that, first of all, I don't think they're going anywhere. Second of all, if they do go somewhere, the skills that you learn in Salesforce to be an effective admin or to be an effective developer or an effective business analyst or marketer, those skills are transferable all kinds of places. They're, project management skills, documentation skills, people skills, design skills. All of those things really shouldn't matter what platform you're applying them to. They just make you better at whatever product you're in front of. So those are a few things that I would say about just the company itself and the career trajectory and longevity. And then let's talk about Salesforce, the product. What is Salesforce? I think a lot of us would say, oh, it's a CRM, right? Well, what is a CRM? Customer relationship management. It's all just a bunch of fancy words for a database. It's a place to store the information you care about. So if you're Sephora, right, if you're selling makeup, you probably care about your customers, your partners, the businesses you work with, your suppliers, the products, right? All of that is so integral to your business's success. So you'd want a way to keep track of it. If you're a nonprofit, on the other hand, maybe you need to keep track of your donors. Maybe you have constituents you're providing services to, various stakeholders, board members. There's so many things that are involved with successfully running any organization that you need some kind of system behind it to keep it all organized. And that's what Salesforce is for. And I think the thing that really differentiates it as a product, because I think some of you might know this, or maybe you're just learning this, but the founders of Salesforce actually used to work for Oracle, which is one of the competitors. You'll see they're always like, oh, look at where Salesforce is against Oracle in the little charts. But they left and they started Salesforce to be a similar product, but it's really different in that it's open source. It's got this kind of community to it. It's embraces third parties, and it's just like completely accessible. So that's what I really love about it, and that I got hooked on is I've never enjoyed coding or anything like that, but I can use Salesforce and I can make it do so many complex things for me and for the businesses and organizations that I work with, that it's huge. And it's not just a database, it also has automations, and a lot of the things that Salesforce, the products do is, a lot of it is out of the box, can be like already set up for you. So you don't have to program it. You don't have to code all the back end. You can kind of just like set up a few things, move a couple things around on the pages and call it done. So that's Salesforce just at its core. What is just the basic product offering, right? Is the database essentially. But that's not all Salesforce is, right? It's actually a suite of products. So it's not just the Salesforce platform. If you're familiar with the ecosystem, you probably recognize these as the various clouds or the products that they offer. So they work with commerce, they work with health and marketing, analytics, nonprofits, education, sales, service, and there's so many more. I couldn't fit them on the slide, but I wanted you to see this to realize we talk about Salesforce careers. We're talking about lots of different things and lots of different layers. So Salesforce, the company, there's already 50,000 jobs there. So already huge amount of opportunity, great place to work, really good culture, really good benefits, all that kind of stuff. Then within it, you've got all these different products that you could, work on. And I want you to think about also the various industries that these may apply to, right? So commerce, that would be like for retail, for example. Health, obviously healthcare. Finance isn't on here, but you can imagine financial services might be using something like the Sales Cloud, for example, to manage their business, something like that. And another piece of advice, a lot of folks ask me when they're just starting out in Salesforce, they're like, what do I do to be successful in my career? How do I stand out? There's so many other people applying for these entry-level jobs. I feel like I'm just one of 100 or 1,000 in the stack. Like, how do I look different? And I would say, even though it probably feels really scary to pick one niche right now, do it. Figure out what that's why I asked you what you're passionate about, what you care about. Lean into that. What do you have background experience in? What did you enjoy working in, that kind of industry? Or what are you interested in being a part of? So think about that, and maybe even take a minute for yourself, take a screenshot of this slide, or just take a little moment to reflect and think about, like, maybe what's one industry that I feel like I could be really successful in long term. So we have still only really talked about just Salesforce, the product and the company, right? And the whole product suite. There's even more beyond that. There's a whole ecosystem of various companies and services that interact with Salesforce. So you've got product partners. These are companies that create products or add-ons that fit on top of Salesforce. So there's all these third-party services. You may have heard of some like Conga or DocuSign, Apsona. Those are all examples of product partners. So they create products that sit on top of Salesforce. If you're someone who's really interested in creating efficient products and services, if you love design, if you love market research and figuring out how to make something really effective, then product partners might be a great place for you. Then there's consulting partners. So product partners, they're building the apps or tools that fit onto Salesforce and might sit in the App Exchange. Consulting partners are providing more of services. So these are the folks who are going to help either just people who purchase Salesforce and or the third-party products, help them to set it up and customize it and use it effectively. So there's all kinds of roles within this system. If you're someone who's really service oriented, like I heard a lot of you saying, like, I love helping my community, I really love helping others and seeing them succeed. Consulting could be a really great place for you, especially if you like variety. This is a place where it's a little bit different. Consulting partners, you may be working with lots of different clients over time. So if you're someone who's like, I don't just want the same thing day in, day out, consulting could be a good place for you. Then you've got customers. That's probably the place that you're the most familiar with. So these are the people who literally bought Salesforce. So the nonprofits who are using it need to set it up, or the for-profits who are setting it up and using it. So anybody who purchases Salesforce needs help to use it, right? And to set it up and all that. So you've got within customers, you have administrators who help maintain the product over time. You have maybe developers, depending on the size of the company. You might actually have in-house developers who work on developing the product even further. You definitely need people to help train new folks and onboard them to the system, to manage the users and all that. So if you're someone who likes consistency, if you love to build relationships and have the same kind of core team and really see a product from the start to the end point and just have that longevity, a customer is a great place for you to look for a job, to give you that kind of like home kind of feeling and stability that you might be looking for. You just check the chat for a minute. Exactly, great. All right, and then we have community. So there's an entire community of folks who use Salesforce, train on Salesforce, coach on Salesforce, learn about Salesforce. If you ever logged into Trailhead or just by joining me today, you are now part of the community, so welcome. And I guess let me pause for a minute and go back to this whole ecosystem slide and just say a couple things. Just first of all, like I was saying about the product suite, and I think I kind of hinted at it going around the whole map, but there's so many layers to your career, from the product that you're choosing, the niche that you're choosing, the type of company that you're working for, the size of the company, the age of the company, the culture of the company. So many things factor into how you experience your career and how successful you might be. This is yet another layer that I want you to consider, is like, there's not just Salesforce, the product, there's this product suite. So which industry do you feel like you might be a good part of? And then what kind of positioning, I guess, or perspective on Salesforce do you want to be? Do you want to be on the customer side? Do you want to be on the consulting side? Do you want to be on the product side? Do you want to be in the community? Where in that kind of map do you feel like you fit? And if there's any questions, do please feel free to type them in the chat. All right, so you heard about Salesforce, you understand Salesforce, you're so excited you want to get a Salesforce career. So now what do you do? How do you unlock it? What are my secrets to tell you today? So what are the pros and cons going in straight into the consulting before admin? So I think there's so many things. Depends on your experience going in. I think for myself, having been an admin and having experienced the client side has made me a much more effective consultant, just because there's so many things that you may assume. And even as an admin, not consulting, but within a full-time org, like a nonprofit or whatever it may be, I know I did, and I know a lot of people do underestimate the people element. And so if you've been an admin yourself and if you've experienced it, it's going to be a lot easier for you as a consultant to know what's implementable, what kind of timeline is realistic, what can people actually learn and digest in that period of time, and what kind of features did you actually find useful versus not. So there's like the consultant, I think of as like kind of the jack of all trades. You're going to be thinking at such a high level, but you're not going to experience it. So I do think there's pros and cons. I mean, if you just love consulting, you could go straight into it, especially if you're not really you're not going to get a lead consultant job off the bat probably anyway. You're probably going to be more like a business analyst or something like that. And there's nothing wrong with starting there either. I think you learn just from a different perspective. So it's just kind of like, what works better for you? Are you like a learning by doing person, or are you a learning by seeing person? What kind of lifestyle is a good fit for you? I think both are possible. Where to start with a nonprofit? So many things. If you remind me at the very end, I'll try to find the implementation guide. Salesforce has its own implementation guide. There's also a trail mix that I really like. It's implement the nonprofit starter pack or something like that. If you remind me, I'll put them in the links at the end. All right. This actually kind of leads into the next part, which is, what are my tips for unlocking the career? So the first one is role alignment. You really got to get clear on who are you, what do you want in this world, what roles make sense for you. Then you beef it up with the certifications and the experience. And there's not a specific order that you would follow. The certifications to me are the theory, the experience is the practice. You need both really to get a successful job or to get the kind of job that's going to make you really happy. So you want to think about not just one, but both. And there's another part that didn't make it on the slide, but your network is also hugely important. So I know some of you might be in like Talent Stacker, some of those other like Supermoms and some of those other programs. I think that's hugely important to build your network and have a community of folks who you can refer jobs to and who can refer you as well. So within role alignment, I made this slide trying to give you a visual of at least like the main top few roles that are in the Salesforce ecosystem. These roles may exist in any of those parts of the ecosystem that I mentioned before. So these roles could be at consultants or could be at customers or at the product. I'll try to call out which ones might be more attached to different industries or different parts of the ecosystem as we go through. But I wanted you to see this, and I tried to visualize it in a way that you can think of, you know, where am I starting from? Am I starting from basically like no experience and no technical knowledge? Do I feel like I have a lot of experience, but not a lot of technical knowledge? Am I super techie, but I'm pretty fresh to the field? Figure out where you are in this kind of chart, and that'll help you think about where do you want to go? So, you know, do you want to be super technical, super senior? And these aren't even necessarily correlating to salary. I mean, sales managers can actually make more than architects if you're really good at sales. And you don't have to know much about the tech side of it to be an effective salesperson, for example, or marketing. You could do marketing strategy and really understand what your ideal customer goes through and how you can engage with them better. So if I go through, let me go through each one and just try to like highlight what it is and who it might be a good fit for. And I would say, keep in mind, not just where you think you want to be now or soon, but where do you want to be long-term? Because you can think it's almost like stepping stones. Like, okay, well, long-term, I want to be a consultant. Do I have the experience and the technical knowledge to go there right now? Maybe, maybe not. If I don't, what are some of these other roles that I could consider kind of hopping through on my way? Like I said, my own experience, I worked on sales operations for a couple of years, which was, I would say, most similar to the business analyst role before I made the jump to admin and consultant. So there are ways that you can navigate basically your strategy to get to where you want to be long term. So don't just think now about, you have to think about now, obviously, for practical people, but don't just limit yourself to that. Think about now, but also the future. So let me just finish giving a little overview. We talked about sales, we talked about marketing. Trainer, I saw there's other educators on the line, and I know I've talked to a lot of folks, shocker, with COVID and everything. It's really, I think, woken up a lot of educators to considering their career, and if they really do want to commit to it or if they want to make a change. I think a very transferable place for educators is the Salesforce trainers. If anyone's using Salesforce, they need to teach people how to use it, right? You have new staff coming on, you have new features rolling out, you need people to not only teach it, but you also need them to do the instructional design and write up the curriculum and all that. And there's a huge need. I've seen actually more and more instructional designer roles out there in the marketplace. So definitely consider that if you are an educator and if you have a strength in that field. I think you could be super successful. Then we move over to kind of the more, I think, traditional kind of Salesforce roles, if you think about it. Business analysts, and I think I said this in the last one, and I do still think it's true. Business analyst and administrator, you could almost argue that these circles could take up like the whole screen, because depending on the company that you're at and the type of teams that they have structured, you may have an incredibly senior admin role, or you could have a really junior admin role. It really depends on where you are. But in general, administrators are responsible for maintaining an org long-term. So if you come to an organization that just got Salesforce, you actually might be setting it up and doing all that part and then managing it long-term. If you're coming into an organization that's had Salesforce for a while, you probably want to do some auditing and cleanup and then manage it long-term. It really kind of depends on, like I said, the context and the situation that you're in. Also, if you're solo or if you're one of many, that's another thing to think about. A lot of people don't consider the size of the organization or the age of the organization. So for example, if you work at Salesforce, you might be one of 100 administrators. I know I used to have a roommate who was a Salesforce admin at Salesforce, and he would complain to me all the time. He's like, Laurel, all I ever get to do is make pick list fields, and that's it. I'm so bored. Some people like that stability and that repetition. And it is sometimes really nice to have peers who have literally the same job as you, but other people might find that limiting. So admin at an org like mine, where there's only 50 staff, it's me. I do everything. So from the budget to managing the vendors, to doing the training, to doing the configuration, to writing all the automations, it's this gal. It really depends on where you are. Business analyst is often a kind of support role to admins and or consultants. So they tend to work between the technical teams and the business units. The business units would be like the people who are actually going to use Salesforce. So like the sales team or the fundraising team or whoever it may be. The business analyst is responsible for understanding what are all the needs of the various people or the various stakeholders out there. And then how does that translate to Salesforce? How can I think proactively about building a system that's going to meet everybody's needs and that's comprehensive? So there are going to be really strong people with documentation skills. I also call them like the translators. So if you're the kind of person you're like, oh, I can talk about tech stuff to anybody, I can talk about it to your Uncle Jim or your niece or whoever it may be. I can talk about Salesforce and you'll understand what I'm saying, whether you're a techie or not. If you're that person, business analyst is a great place for you, because that's really what they need, is someone who can listen first, to document, and then translate that into the technical needs. And then we've got consultants who are going to be project manager type people. So setting timelines, breaking a project down into its various pieces, figuring out what are the milestones and the outcomes to be expected, and then just managing it all, making sure that your client is really happy. So consultants, I think I said this earlier, I think of them as a really big generalist. In fact, if you've taken any of the consultant cloud certifications in Salesforce, you may have experienced this. You're like, they want me to know about literally every product and every module and add-on, and it's so much. Yes, they don't ask you nitty-gritty questions about like, oh, well, how would you write this little line of code for this flow? No, they want you to understand what's the entire breadth of possible solutions and think about what's going to be the most effective one for your client that you're working with. So like I said, if you're a really good project manager, if you're really good at assessing risk and budget and things like that, and making complicated choices from various decisions and solutions, consultant is great for you. Solution engineers, this is one of my favorite roles in general. I love them because they are technical, but they're also usually with the sales or account management team. And solution engineers, their job is to basically mock up solutions. So proof of concept essentially for either existing clients who want to do upgrades or changes, or new customers. If you're you might be pre-sales engineer, which would mean for the sales folks trying to sell especially large accounts, you might build out a whole Salesforce demo of like, oh, look, it could do this, it could do that, and then you connect to this, and then like the magic, and here's the report. You could actually be the one responsible for building that or be a part of the team who's building that. That's what I think is so cool. And they know their shit. They always are so smart. Every time I have a solution engineer on the phone, I feel so confident that I can get all my questions answered because they always know. And then architect and developers are definitely by far the most technical. So these are, I think, especially developers, what we would think of as more traditional computer engineering, that kind of software engineering kind of role. So they're writing code or doing QA and that kind of thing. And then architects are almost like consultants, but a lot more technical. So the architects are really thinking about literally the architecture of the database. You can think of them almost as like an architect, but for Salesforce. So they're thinking about everything, especially for very, very large systems that are complicated, that have lots of connections to external tools. Then you need someone like an architect to really think through, how is this all going to work together? How are things going to impact each other? Just like if you're building a house, it's like, oh, if you want a huge bay window over here, well, that's going to make the roof this tall, and then you have to account for everything else and the foundation, I'm not an architect, but I think I generally get what it means. It's like you're trying to make sure that it all works together and that the thing isn't going to fall apart when you turn it on, right? Yeah, and depending on the org, BA and or admin roles could be available. So some of the solution engineer probably isn't going to exist at any company that has less than a couple hundred employees, especially if they're not Salesforce specific companies. So it's like a nonprofit of 200 staff is not going to have a solution engineer, most likely. Nonprofit with 1,000 staff and a whole IT department might actually have something like a solution engineer kind of role. Same thing with developers and architects. A lot of times those might be outsourced as consultants as opposed to in-house. So if you're like, I want to work for a consulting company, developer or architect actually could be a really good route for you, or consultant, that's the most obvious, it goes with consulting. And then sales and marketing and training, you can kind of do anywhere. If you imagine like even nonprofits who use Salesforce need marketing managers, need people who can run things like Marketing Cloud or Pardot or whatever they might be using. All right. Any questions about this slide? Does it help to see it all kind of laid out like this? I know it's been in my head like this forever, and I just like needed to put it out there. Definitely. I know you go to the certification website and it's just like, you could be anything. And I'm like, but which, tell me a little bit more about which things might be the best for me and where do I start? Awesome. I'm so glad this is helping. Fantastic. All right. So alignment, super, super important. And I think a lot of people underestimate this step as well. I really do believe knowing yourself is the first step to having the most successful career possible. I thought for the longest time, I like organizing things. I do not. I do not like writing documentation. I do not like writing meeting agendas. I do not like emailing people back and forth a million times to schedule stuff. But I was an executive assistant for a long time. And I got it in my head that that was because I did it a lot. I was like, that's what I'm good at. You got to just get super real with yourself and just be like, who am I? What do I like? What don't I like, most importantly? And what kind of life do I want to live? Are you someone who likes stability, or are you someone who likes variety? Are you someone who likes to work alone, or do you like to work in a team? Do you like to work 9 to 5, or do you like to work literally whenever you want to? All of those things will determine which role and which kind of company and which industry is the best fit for you. So once you figure out who you are, what you want to do, where you want to go, what's your path, then think about how can you build a really compelling argument for getting employed in that industry and that career path, right? So to me, the two things, like I said earlier, certifications and experience. You got to get both, especially in Salesforce. So if we talk certifications, just if it's new to anybody, certifications, you can find them on the Trailhead website under the credentials area. They're essentially a formal exam. If you took the SAT or the ACT or any of those formalized assessments earlier in your lives, it is very much like that. They cost money to take, although if you do the Salesforce career certification days, you can get a voucher, but they do cost a little bit of money. It's an investment. If you fail the first time, you can retake it and it's less. So don't worry too much. It's not the $250 every time. I think it's only $100 to retake. And then again, you can use those vouchers and things to help with the cost. Some roles might need more than one certification. So do consider that, especially like the consultant roles and things that are a little more advanced. You might not be able to get a job right away with just the admin cert. You might need quite a few. For myself personally, what I experienced is that having just the admin cert was definitely not enough on its own. I had 3 years of admin experience and the admin cert, and I basically got a BA role. That was what the marketplace deemed the best fit for me. Once I got to 3 certs, that's when the recruiters started calling me. They're like, oh, hey, I saw you have this. Oh, hey, you're a great fit for that. That's when I started to see a difference. I mean, the other things I did were to change my LinkedIn profile and my resume and all that to be really streamlined. And basically you apply like search engine optimization principles to your LinkedIn. So all those keywords, make sure you have them in there. the more third-party apps you learn, the better. So like once I had Conga on there, people were super excited. Once I had DocuSign and Pardot and things like that, I definitely got a lot more attention. So certifications, you do kind of need them. I know that like it's not enough though. This is what people are like, oh, you don't need certifications to get employed. This is true. If you have a lot of experience, you might not actually need the cert. But I'm like, if you have a ton of experience, why not just get the cert, especially if you have something like professional development budget, where your employer can cover the costs, things like that. Some certs have prerequisites. So for example, the platform app builder, you have to take the admin first. So just to be aware, you can find out all the information on that website. So definitely look around and think about with which path, like I said, once you figured out alignment, which path is right for you, then you can look at what certifications might relate to that path. And a lot of them, if you're like, I don't want to do all the research, just tell me, Laurel. It's probably a safe bet just to get the admin cert, just that basic Salesforce, they call it the Salesforce Certified Administrator Exam, the 201. It's usually the first one on a path to a career. The only exception I would say is if you have a really heavy computer science background, like maybe you already have some coding knowledge or database knowledge and you want to do developer, maybe you just do Dev 1 instead and you can skip the admin. But I'm like, maybe I'm biased. I'm definitely biased. But everyone should learn the admin stuff anyway. It's just like foundational knowledge is so important. Let me check the chat. After admin, what do I get? Great question. So here's the short and skinny, whatever that phrase is. The admin cert, I highly recommend planning to get your platform app builder like 4 to 8 weeks after it, because the platform app builder exam, the content is, I want to say like 60 to 70% the same as the admin exam. So if you just studied for admin and it's fresh in your mind and you're like, oh, I really got it, you really only have to learn a couple new concepts like the change sets and sandbox management, and that's it. And you know everything for platform app builder. The other thing I want to mention, people ask about certifications and like, what's the difference? The Salesforce admin cert, I find that the questions are written more confusing, that they're basically trying to trick you more with the wording and the way that they ask the questions, versus the platform app builder is a little bit more straightforward, but more technical. So the admin is like a little more basic in terms of technical, but definitely harder in terms of like the question format. And platform app builder is a little bit more straightforward question format, but more deep into the technical pieces. And then after that, you have some options. I would recommend, if you do want to go dev, obviously dev would be a good one after that. But if you want to do something industry specific, that's what I did. I got my clouds. Well, I got my advanced admin too, although I don't know if I would recommend it. If you're like, I just really want it, go for it. I don't recommend it because it's hard to pass. The passing score is really high. It's like 67% versus 65 or something like that. And platform app builder does count towards some of the architect certifications, but the advanced admin does not. So I definitely recommend platform app builder over the advanced admin. And then look at some of the clouds. Like if you're in sales, do sales cloud. If you're a nonprofit, do nonprofit cloud. Or if you're in service, do service cloud, something like that. That's kind of the cert path that I personally recommend. Yeah, it looks like a couple people agreeing with me. And I saw a question about experience. That's actually my next slide. Let's hop on over to that one. So experience, how do I get experience? So first of all, you already have experience, I promise you. I don't care what you've done with your life so far, you have something that is related in your experience. Make sure you are showing that. Don't hide it from your resume, from your LinkedIn, and from your portfolios. If you don't have a portfolio, put something together. There's a Trailhead module about like how to build your own portfolio. I think it's on the Experience Cloud or something like that. You can do something as basic as a blog. There's all kinds of free website hosting platforms. Like I use Wix. I used it for free for a long time, and now I pay for some of the upgrades. There's all kinds of stuff out there, but definitely don't hide your experience. That's the first thing I want you to think about, is like, I promise you already have something you should be showing off. Figure out how to show it off. And And also consider who you and your style. So if you're really visual, if you like talking, maybe record some videos of yourself talking about your project. If you more like writing and reflecting, make a little blog series. I did a little blog series that I did like hashtag project playback, where I talked about the projects that I worked on. And for me, it was just like a really nice way to demonstrate my thought process and the work that I've done, and most importantly, the outcomes that you reached with that experience. So that's number one. You have experience, show it off. Think about the types of experience as well. So when you're thinking about, yes, Laurel, I get it. I have some experience. Thank you. I want to get more. Well, these are the types to consider. Salesforce experience. I think I saw in the chat people recommending volunteer engagements. Absolutely. That's one way to gain experience. The other thing is hands-on projects. And this is something I definitely want to hammer through to y'all. There's so many ways to get experience. If you just want to do it on your own for totally free, go on Trailhead. Don't just look at the super badges. There's projects. I don't know if you've seen that section yet. Projects are basically like super badges, but much shorter and much more cohesive. So they're going to be hands-on experience in Trailheads. They're going to tell you basically step-by-step how to do something. But it won't be as complicated as a super badge or as time intensive. The other thing is just think for yourself, like, what do you want to build? What is something you've thought about? Like, so for example, like I've read about Web to Lead forever, right? We have to learn about it for the admin exam, but I never personally set it up. So I was like, well, why don't I try to set it up? What's the worst that could happen? It's like, well, it doesn't work and it's on a website that no one goes to. So great. You can just or just set up like a free website, create the little Web to Lead form and pop it in there and practice and just see what it's like. And then put it on your little portfolio, take some screenshots of it, write a little blog post, make sure that you think about all the different ways. And I'll mention at the end too, if you're like, I love that idea, Laurel, but there's so many thoughts in my head and I have no structure and it would be really great if someone just told me what to do. I'm actually doing a build your own Salesforce app class. We actually wrapped up the last round this morning where my participants gave their demos of their final apps, and it was so great to see what they had built. And I'm really excited to start that again on the end of the month on May 30th. So if you're looking for a small group class with a little bit of structure to build your own Salesforce app and get experience, definitely feel free to join me for that. I'll put the links in at the end for how to register. I also wanted to make sure you're not just thinking narrowly. Don't just think about Salesforce experience. Like I said, you have experience. You probably have one or both of the last two, your industry experience and your IT experience. So I think a lot of people really underestimate, especially industry experience. You can be an amazing Salesforce admin. You can know the ins and outs of the technical side, but if you don't understand how the business operates, it's going to take you a lot of time to get up to speed, right? If you've never worked in sales before and someone's going to have to teach you, like, this is how we court a customer, their first call to prospect, right? There's so much education involved just with learning about an industry and its best practices that if you know something just from working in the same field for a while, you actually do have a valuable skill to share. So make sure you think about that as well. Oh yeah, talking about like how practical the cert is. Yeah, so the cert to me is absolutely theory. If we're talking about like these two pieces, right, certs and experience, certs are the theory, experience is the practice. So you need both. Which one is right for you to kind of focus on in the near term is probably a question of where your biggest gap is. So if you're like, I have my cert, I feel like I've really got theoretical knowledge, but I have no experience, then think about how to gain more hands-on experience, maybe with that group class or just, on Trailhead or something like that, or with a volunteer project. If you're like, I have lots of experience, but I don't have my cert, or maybe I want to get that 3+ cert, then think about doing a study strategy, figure out which certs you're going to get, make timelines, like set goals for yourself. I can also help you with your cert prep if you need, but make sure that you're thinking about like, where's my biggest gap and where should I be focusing my energy? And then IT experience. So if you have any experience, whether it's even the help desk, I worked the help desk at college and just like mostly filled the printer paper and held people's hands when they blue screened of death during finals week. But that was also really important transferable experience that has helped me to get these jobs along the way. So don't underestimate yourself. Please make sure that you are highlighting everything that you've done that's related to where you want to go. Awesome. And I see people sharing resources in the chat. I love it. Speaking of resources, again, thank you all for sharing your resources with each other. I love this community. Hell yeah, build it up. I also want to point out a few different things. On Trailhead, there is a career development planning trail, which I really like. It's got a few different modules in it. Let me open it up just so you can see actually. This first one, assess yourself. There's a link embedded within it, which they should really just put it at the top. This one, the Career Explorations Resource Pack. Download this, and it's going to have, I think, 4 documents inside. The first one is a self-assessment, and I think it's a great way, just a basic starting point for you to think about, like, who am I and what am I passionate about and what am I interested in? So that to me is a really great place to start. Of course, every time I navigate away from Prezi, it's always dangerous. Okay. And make sure to download that resource pack. Mason Frank survey. So I kind of buried the lead on the salary part, but if you didn't already know, Salesforce salaries are pretty great. That's kind of the biggest reason to look at the salary survey, but I really love that Mason Frank in the last few years has added a lot more to this than just the numbers. I mean, the numbers motivating, but also wanted to point out there's 60 slides in here. There's so much information from what are contractors working on, what are why are people unemployed in the industry? How are people skilling up? How are they using Trailhead? What makes you attractive to employers? What industries are using Salesforce? There's so much in here that I definitely wanted to make sure you got this resource and that you check it out. A lot of you probably know Mason Frank from the recruiters, which you may have had positive or negative experiences, but I highly recommend their salary survey. They do it every year. Actually, they should be due for another one soon. Have to look forward to that coming up. All right, that's Mason Frank. And then, oh yes, and I mentioned this earlier, the Salesforce Certification Days workshops. So these are free workshops. I think they're usually like all day on a Saturday kind of thing. And the most important is if you sit through it all, you get the exam voucher, so you can get a discount on taking that actual exam. So if the $250 fee for the exam is a financial hardship, I definitely recommend checking out these certification days. Awesome. Books, techniques, mentorships. Awesome. Love it. All right. So more resources. I definitely wanted to make sure you saw all those free resources out there. Make sure that you get your hands on all of the great learning modules that are available to you. I also want to let you know what I can provide. I know a lot of you have worked with me in the past, but if you haven't, I want to make sure you are aware that we have a few group classes coming up. I have a career coaching program, as well as I can also tailor individual one-on-one programs. So if you just need that individual support, either to prepare for your cert or to help you in your career path, let me know and we can figure something out. But I definitely want to make sure that you all see the group classes that are coming out in May, at the end of May. So starting on the last Sunday of May, it's Sundays at 10 a.m. Build your own Salesforce app group class. It's going to be 8 weeks. You only meet for an hour on every Sunday, and no previous experience is required. We'll teach you all the basics. A lot of it really is about learning the software lifecycle development best practices, things like what the heck is Agile, what is waterfall, what is a user story, how do I design an effective product. A lot of that we're going to cover. And then you'll leave with a demo, and I'm going to record it so that you get a copy for your portfolio. Like I said, you got to show off your work. So if you're interested in that, it's going to start, like I said, on the last Sunday of May, going for 8 weeks. Also running an admin boot camp. So if you want to get certified, that first certification, the administrator boot camp, we're going to meet on every Saturday in June to get you certified for, we're going to meet for an hour and a half. So it's a little more intensive. That's what I'm calling a boot camp. So definitely a lot more in-depth, making sure that in those 4 weeks, you are fully prepared to ace your certification. And in that, we'll have interactive study guide. I think the most important things, and for those of you who may have worked with me one-on-one, I think this special sauce really is talking about the test-taking strategies and really dissecting those practice problems together, making sure you understand, like, how do I identify keywords? How do I eliminate various possible answers? Because the admin exam can be quite difficult just in the way that it's asked and the way that they ask the questions, and they will try to trick you. They definitely will try to trick you. So let me know if you're interested in that, or I'll provide the link to just sign up. The last thing is I mentioned the one-on-one career coaching. So I have a 90-day program with a bunch of resources and guides to help you prepare for your career. We'll do some interview practice and negotiation and all kinds of things. Make sure you're super aligned with your career goals and that you're, most important, motivated and held accountable to being the best person you want to be. So if you're interested in any of those, like I said, I'm going to put up all the links at the end. And if finance is an issue, please let me know if you're still interested. I'm trying to do things like these group classes to bring the cost down because I want it to be accessible for everyone. I really believe that Salesforce saved me from making like $40,000 a year as a coordinator at a nonprofit and really thinking like, how the heck am I ever going to buy a car, let alone a house? How am I going to have a family to today being super successful as an admin and a consultant and a career coach? It means so much to me that I want to be able to give it back to you. So please reach out if there is a financial burden or something like that stopping you from participating. Amazing. Thank you. All the links. Yes, yes, yes. Okay. Speaking of all the links, I made a document for myself because I didn't want to lose them all. Here are literally all the links. So if you want to sign up for any of those classes, if you want to see the surveys, if you want to look at those certification days, all of the links that I mentioned throughout this presentation are here now in the chat. And let me go back to this guy. So that's really it for the presentation today. Thank you all so much for joining me. It was a pleasure. Let me figure out how to unmute you all, and do please feel free to type any questions that you have in the chat, or if you just want to talk to me one-on-one, I'm happy to have a free 30-minute call, talk through your goals and what kind of coaching might be helpful for you, or just clarify some questions that you're having. Or you can email me at laurel@lm-consults.com.